Well, in this video, let's talk about Johnny Gaudreau and these guys, the Calgary Flames. Hi there, it's Brett Hornby here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. And definitely has been, of course, always rumors and speculation on what's going to happen to Johnny Gaudreau, Johnny Hockey, in terms of, is he still going to be with the Calgary Flames, or is he going to get traded? And there's been rumors about him saying he wants to potentially play closer to home where he grew up, like with the Philadelphia Flyers and Jersey Devils, or maybe potentially the Boston Bruins. However, there's actually been word that the Calgary Flames and Johnny Gaudreau, I think this is just starting the process, is now that we're into the off-season and Johnny Gaudreau is in the last year of his existing contract that pays him $6.75 million, that both Johnny Gaudreau and the Flames are actually talking about an extension. And there's definitely a couple of ways you can look at this right now. I think one could be that maybe the fact that Johnny Gaudreau maybe actually wants to stay here long term. I know that I see both sides of the coin. I mean, he wouldn't move the needle for me either way. I do like Johnny Gaudreau as a player, but at the same time, I'm not quite sure if he would fit the mold. And I always say with Johnny Gaudreau, with some of my videos in the past, that he is a great player, but he's a great secondary complimentary player. I wouldn't necessarily put him on, the marquee or on billboards saying he is the face of the franchise. Like, for example, when we had Jerome McGinley, he is that kind of player, and Johnny Gaudreau isn't. And then the fact that a couple of years ago, he had his best career season in 2018-19, where he was 1 point short of reaching 100 points on the season. But then it's ultimately, with the core, especially with Johnny Gaudreau, that it hasn't been playoff success at all, where we either miss the playoffs or just get out in the first round. And then that's where I say, on one hand, it is definitely smart right now to even at least talk about the extension, just to see where both sides are at. And then the other speculation that there is some early word on the street in the Twitterverse that apparently we're looking at potentially $7 million to $7.5 million per year with Johnny Gaudreau. Would you say he is worth that if we decide to sign him to an extension? By the other hand, this Calgary Flames team, with the roster that they have right now, this is not a roster that we can also say, stand pat, go to war with it next season. Because I think if we go to war with it, not making any major changes, that we're going to be back next year at this time talking about either just missing the playoffs again or getting out in the first round with a quick cameo with whoever we happen to draw. But the other side is, I think one of the things that brought down the Calgary Flames this season was the fact that we didn't have any depth scoring in the bottom six forwards as much, let's say, compared to, teams that are more successful in the playoffs. So I see both sides of the coin. I think it is worth exploring just to see where we're at. If both Johnny Gaudreau and the Calgary Flames can't quite see eye to eye, then this is the chance where, if it goes down that route, that we can look at potentially trading him. And I do think besides Matthew Tkachuk, I think Johnny Gaudreau could potentially warrant a much bigger return to bring pieces if we were to go down that route. But on the other hand, if Johnny Gaudreau wants to stay in Calgary, it's definitely still worth hanging on to him and look at making changes elsewhere. Because, he hasn't said, and of course he's not going to say, I want to get the, out of here, unless he was extremely disgruntled. And I don't feel that with Johnny Gaudreau, and I think it's part of the speculation. I think until we have success in the playoffs where we at least get out of the first round, and he's kind of going to follow him. But at the same time, you got to remember back in 2015, we got out of the first round with that core with Sean Monahan and Johnny Gaudreau. That's what makes this team, frustrating to follow at the same time, where, we've had success in the past with this same group of players, but we've had different coaches. And it's the other thing you got to wonder is now with a fuller season with Daryl Sutter behind the bench, and the fact that we'll be in a much more closer to a normal season where we're playing everyone in our regular divisions, travel in front of fans, because I still think that the fact that Calgary was playing in the North All-Canadian Division, I think that did hurt the Calgary Flames a little more than if we would have played in the Pacific Division. I think we would have had more success. But it's at least worth talking about, seeing where the Calgary Flames and Johnny Gaudreau is at. If there's a deal to be made, that makes sense, either to keep Johnny Gaudreau. I say it's worth it, but I also say it's worth, put him in the cart to shop around to see what we could get in return. I would say I'd go down that route if indeed if it means that we don't see eye to eye, or if there's a deal that you just can't refuse. And I'm just not too sure where other markets in the NHL, how they value Johnny Gaudreau, and if the word's true that the starting price, which would be not that much more than he's making right now at $6.75 million, that's $7.5 million, keep in mind, with a flat cap. And some players also need to realize that they can have two options. They can either take, full market value, go to a team, but then that might eat away cap room to not build, a team to have success, or willing to take a little less money, still do very well, may I add, and ultimately build a team that you can fill out. I mean, that's the thing with Tampa Bay, for example, that they're definitely going to be in salary cap jail now that they won the Stanley Cup. But they're still able to plug out, filler players that are willing to take less money. Well, Florida also has the advantage of, better tax system than up in Canada. And we don't have, taxes and winter up in Canada as compared to in Florida. But I just say, what do you think about the word that the Calgary Flames and Johnny Gaudreau? There's word that, I think this is just still early discussions, and that's, the right to do as once a player goes into the final year of their contract. That's when you can start talking discussion, and it's smart right now to at least talk discussion for an extension, just to see where both sides are at. And if a deal makes sense financially, go do it. Or if not, that's when you can look at potentially shopping around to see what we can get best value for him. And then also where the team will be at, let's say at the trade deadline, if we can either bring in some more talent or even shop them out if we're out of a playoff hunt. Even then, the other piece of it is, even if we sign to an extension, would that make it a little easier to potentially trade him because there's more term instead of an expired contract? There's just very, very many ways to look at it. I do like Johnny Gaudreau as a player, but the fact that he's not that gritty player, but we need that mix of grit and skill and finesse. But until, we get success in the playoffs on a more consistent basis with him and the other players in the core, I mean, you got to look at Sean Monahan. I mean, Matthew Tkachuk definitely fits that mold, and hopefully that the Flames can find that balance with Matthew Tkachuk, that he could be that pest player but not be Brad Marchand pest. That's what he's most effective, and apparently there was word that Johnny Gaudreau kind of told Matthew Tkachuk that during the season last year, but we'll see. But I just say I see both sides of the coin. I have both pros and cons on it right now, but we just can't do anything. We can't just let the clock run. It's like, oh, let's discuss an extension. We just need to see where we're at with Johnny Gaudreau, if indeed he actually does want to stay here for another 6 years, for example, 6, 7, 8 years. If at that deal, I think that would be the cap hit right now, is it's going to be a little more than $7 million with the flat cap, and just where he's at and the kind of player he is. It doesn't have the justification of playoff success yet. I mean, he does have a Lady Byng, but he did win the Lady Byng a couple years ago for most general meat player, but Lady Byngs are not as heavily weighted, let's say, Hart trophies, and obviously, Selkies or Stanley Cups or Conn Smythes, but, who knows, that could still be in the future for Johnny Gaudreau, and preferably with these guys, if everything makes sense. So that's what I say. What do you think of the potential contract extension with Johnny Gaudreau and the Calgary Flames? They have to at least talk about it, see where we're at. That's all I can say for this video. So anyways, like I say, if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fan's journey, home the Flames, Hitmen, Roughnecks, Stampeders. Mostly do talk Calgary sports on my YouTube channel, recap game stories, and I just felt this was a rumor or speculation to talk about and make a video on, as is one of our key pieces that definitely has been, kind of a, let's say, the whipping boy, but at the same time, I just still think most fans like Johnny Gaudreau. But if there is a deal that makes sense to either keep him or potentially trade him, you have to explore it. But I also do a variety of non-sports content like personal blogs, attempt to comedy, and I also do share my experience I'm on the road or at a sporting event. And I've been doing some more vlogging to go. So if that all sounds like it'd be interesting to watch, to follow along with this Calgary sports fan's journey, just make sure you hit like and subscribe. I also have my other social links down in the description below. So it'll be interesting either way to see what happens with the Calgary Flames and Johnny Gaudreau. Johnny Hockey, if it makes sense to keep him, let's do it. But it's also worth seeing where we're at, if there's a realistic chance that he's going to stay. But I wouldn't be surprised if we explore potentially shop him around, and maybe the extension at the same time would make it a little easier to get more of a return if it comes down to that at the same time. But I don't feel any disgruntlement with Johnny Gaudreau. I mean, he did say potentially maybe to wind down his career, he wanted to play closer to home, but if we can get prime years out of him, I mean, he's 27 right now. I mean, this is when he should still be approaching the prime. And I mean, he's showing that he could be one of the top talent in the league, but it's just still, we're in that spot where it's like, do we blow it up and rebuild, or we just add a little more and hopefully get over that hump in the first round? That's kind of the worst spot to be in, to be honest with you, in the salary cap era. But that's what it is, where you are right now. So I just want to say, go Flames go. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.